Hello, welcome to some Iceland team previews. We did these for First Strike, and then there hasn't been another tournament where it really felt like there was such unknown talent involved. But I feel like there's a lot of unknown talent hiding around, skulking in the shadows. The dark horses are everywhere. So me and Balla and Wyatt as well, because we can't get rid of him, we're gonna go through some of the teams that are in it. We're gonna break it down by region. So we're starting off with North America. And then we're going to do one about the teams in Europe. Then we're going to lump together the whole of South America, the Vikings and Sharks and crew all together, and then the whole of Asia as well. So there's 4 episodes coming out at you. And the idea is, all right, that we want to give the people some idea of regions they haven't been following. It's a cheat sheet, a guide for if... Are you just a North American simp that's been watching a bunch of streamers and hasn't bothered to tune into the other streams? I know you are. That's what the data says. Then this video will just be telling you what you need to know about the region you already follow, and the other ones will be useful for you. So there we have it. I want to start here by asking, what do you think the overall narrative for North America is at the region right now? Like the overall strength and feel of North America going into Iceland.
Does the North American scene deserve the amount of attention it gets?
We're starting off hot.
Based on their actual skill in the world scene.
Right. And that's the question you think is going to be answered.
The entire North America gets by far the most attention, by far the most viewers. The players that people care about are all North American players, even if they're not even necessarily the best players in the NA scene, let alone able to compete at the top level against Brazil and against Europe. That is the main question to me. Does NA deserve the attention that it gets? Because it's getting a lot of attention, but are they just gonna fall flat? That is the big question for me.
I feel like as well, Balla, it's like, is NA gonna be bad at another video game? Because it really does feel like the hope is still there in Valorant that NA could be up at the top. Whereas it's taken a long time for North America to reach the top of basically anything else. Or if they have been at the top, they've dropped off very quickly afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's been the same kind of story over and over in NA's esports, except, various few. At the beginning, it's like there's sometimes some hope, some cheering for NA, but down the line, as international competitions start, it's always the same sort of disappointments. So I think both of those questions are seriously valid, right? Like for me, I'm wondering, are my nerves about NA right now misplaced? Like, is this gonna go down as actually not showing up? I don't know if we're gonna get an answer to your question though, Wyatt. Like, I don't know if we're going to get an answer to your question, but I think it's still one that's on my mind. It's like, is there a reason why NA actually has all this viewership and all this hype? And is that misplaced? But I don't know. Maybe Berlin will be better for that.
All right. Well, then I think we start there as well. What are your guys' thoughts on the answers to those questions? Just preliminary hints. How good do you think North America actually is on the global scene compared to the other regions? And do you think it's going to live up to the expectations? Because the expectations of the region, I think a lot of people still think that North America is just hands down the best because they've got the most viewership, they probably have the highest salaries, the infrastructure is good, there's a huge amount of organizations involved, so there's a lot of salaried players.
Yeah.
So I think the community expectations are rightly very high.
I think the question will be answered. Honestly, I mean,
that's a politician's answer.
Well,
the question will be answered. I shall not tell you in which direction.
No. I'm going to give you the direction. Because I feel like there's really only a couple realistic outcomes, which are NA bombs out and is just worse than EU and Brazil. I think that's possible.
Okay.
And they just finish below those teams. Aside from maybe SEN finish above Sharks. Or there's a fairly close, like top 3, top 4 that Sentinels are a part of.
Right.
Where they make it into about third or so. But then, they lost to Fnatic in a rematch deep in the tournament, or they'll lose to Liquid deep in the tournament, something
Sure.
like that. But it's not a one-sided affair. I think that those are the two likely outcomes. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they win, but I'm not putting that as a likelihood.
Okay. All right.
I just don't think that any of those like outcomes actually prove anything about that question that you're asking, because we're such a limited pool of teams. Like we don't have the 100 Thieves, which is one of the big reasons why NA's viewership is so high. We don't have some of those other guys as well. So like, and we don't have FPX. We don't have some of the EU teams that everybody expected to be very, very, very good. G2 was that like starting that conversation in the first place, right? That G2 is way better than all the NA teams, and they're not here. They don't even look even close to good. So like, it feels all muddled, you know? Iceland feels hella muddled in regards to whether that, you know, will prove anything.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but also if NA show up and they just fucking slip on a banana peel and fall over and they're out immediately, I think that kind of seals the deal. I think that definitely says something at that point.
Right, but that isn't the most likely outcome. I don't think that's what most people are expecting.
Wow, this bracket's looking rough, honestly.
All right, well,
I mean, we're not going to talk about I mean, I suppose we probably should, since we're doing a preview.
Yeah, but we'll wait until the end after we talk about both the teams, because the team that I want to focus on first is Sentinels. They're the hope of the region, essentially, right? They're the best team, and they've been the best team since, when would you say? Like September? August, was it? Something like that?
Before that. It was like midsummer.
Yeah.
Midsummer,
but I think the team only began
run
in like June, July. And I think that you would have said they overtook TSM sometime around just after the FaZe Invitational or something in August?
No.
It
was midsummer where they started just winning. Because they were beating TSM and winning finals before
they were
the
trading
FaZe
finals against them. I mean, that's August. They lose the finals. They lose the upper bracket as well.
It was up until FaZe Invitational was actually when TSM traded it back.
Right.
I think they've been number one for a long. I mean, they've been the number one NA team for at least then. I mean, we're coming up on a year almost, like 10 months straight.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
which is a hell of a run, especially for a new game. An early FPS game for them to have only made one roster move late in their lifetime, and they've stayed on top. That's very impressive.
What would you say the narrative of Sentinels is, just overall, this team? Because to me, they're defined by their rebounds. Like, they're the number one team in North America, but every time they lose to another challenger team that's coming up, they have the strength to be able to rebound and beat them the next time. Or, you know, they'll take a couple losses, but they'll always end up on top.
Within the bracket, too.
Yeah, and often within the exact same tournament, yeah. And that, to me, is that is Sentinels, is their ability to adapt and react to their opponent and improve off the back of them. Mostly, I think, in credit to Shazam's IGLing. What else do you get when you're thinking about Sentinels?
Slow starters? I think that's a pretty fair judgment. In some of outside like Masters 1, it feels like they've always stumbled at some point throughout either the qualifiers or the actual event itself. God bless you again.
Bless you, sir.
Yeah. God, just every time you say Sentinels, it makes me want to dab and sneeze. I don't know what to say.
Sentinels.
No, it didn't happen that time. Didn't happen.
I just wanted a full blown, hit him with it. Slow. Like, how many times have they lost like one of their initial games, or even just look shaky? Like every single time, it feels like in one of their brackets, or dropped a map to a team that you like at the beginning of the year. They started by dropping a map against some random, like really, really random. Everybody's like, "What the hell? Like this shouldn't happen." And then they ended up. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then LG, they end up losing the series and so on and so forth. So.
But I also think
slow starters is a thing.
I also think that you could turn that on its head a little bit, put some PR spin on it, and say that they turn up in big games. Because that to me is also the other side of that coin, is that whereas some other teams might have inconsistencies and they can't predict when they're going to be bad, for Sentinels, it really does feel like they always turn up in the later games in the tournament. Like as things get deeper, as they get more reads on their opponents, as the games become more serious, Sentinels themselves seem to become a lot better, a lot tighter, more disciplined, and that I think is where you see their best play. So double elimination kind of stuff like this, that Masters 3, the format is, does help them, I think, compared to it being some single elim tournament.
I also think there's something to say about the depth of the field in NA and how much better it is in 2021 than 2020. Because in 2020, they were so clearly ahead for really all of the year. And then first strike, they had the unfortunate circumstances, and then that was the end of their year. And in 2021, the depth of the field in NA and the world, and in all regions, there are so many better players, there's so many better teams. And for instance, if you want to compare them to G2, who were the most comparable team in their dominant run in 2020, as the depth of field increased in EU, they were not able to keep up. It's very difficult to do. There's new players coming up, new styles, but Sentinels were always able to adapt. They were always able to change. They were always able to understand how to beat opponents that were approaching the game in a new way, like Luminosity. I mean, they always have had a read on FaZe when FaZe just came in and dominated every other team. 100 Thieves, their approach, and they can't beat Sentinels anymore.
No.
They have managed to find the way to beat every other team that has been able to come up in the scene. And that is not easy to do. It really isn't. And I think a lot of that is credited to their players' adaptability in regards to their agent pools. They are able to switch to a number of agents. And are competent on all of them. The individual skill across the board is excellent. They really have a lot going for them. They have a great in-game leader. They have all the pieces. They really do. I think I do agree, though. I think perhaps the largest issue for them might just be trying to get I guess, get into a good place in this bracket. Because it's going to be tough for them out the gate. I mean, the first game is probably going to be against Fnatic.
Yeah, that's a rough one, definitely. But like I said, I think they're a lower bracket team, and also their style. If we want to talk about that too, because teams generally have a way in which they like to play. Whereas, we'll talk about this when we get to the EU preview, but the Fnatic is very tactical. Oster's IGLing style is very much around like having things set in stone. Shazam could not be more different, right? This guy's IGLing is about adaptability. It's about reading your opponent, getting a feel on them, and staying loose enough to be able to change up your style to beat them. And I think that's why Sentinels has been so good for so long as well, is that their players are adaptable, and their style overall ends up being adaptable as a result of that too. You were talking about agent flexibility. It feels like Sick has played everything. Zoms can play all of the controllers at this point. Dapper's played not just the Cypher, and he tried a bit of Killjoy, but didn't find it fit with his style. But not like just that, but also has played the Sage and the Viper recently, and tried to play a little bit of Sova, though it didn't look that great.
The other two were better.
Yeah, the other two were better.
Viper was very good, actually.
And then Shaz has the flexibility to move on to Sova when his team needs it, as well as being a star Jett player. So they do have a huge amount of... Yeah, it's Breach back in the day was good too. So they have a huge amount of flexibility.
You're never going to let go of that Breach,
Wyatt. Nope, never letting go. Back. One day I want to see NA Breach again.
What do you think... Who are the core players for this team? If they're going to...
it's Shazam. I mean, if you want to say core player, it's Shazam. Oh, and Sick as well. I mean, those two guys, especially if you're talking 2021. 2020 was a different story, but in 2021, Shazam, I think even more so than Sick, he's just been consistent the entirety of the year. Even when they were, I think their biggest struggles came, well, maybe recently trying to figure out how to work TENS back into the team after their honeymoon run in stage 1. But the top of the year, when Luminosity was the catalyst of their struggles, Shazam throughout all of that and up until now has been mega consistent. I mean, especially his Jett play on Icebox is just so... teams just cannot deal with him when he's on defense with the AWP. He just shuts every A push down. He's been excellent all year. His individual has just been incredible.
I think he was the best player throughout that entire period. The
Oh, for
LG,
sure.
the post LG, like Challengers 1, Challengers 2, all that time.
Yeah.
Even with Sinatra on the team and Dapper playing out of his mind, Sick also playing out of his mind. I think Shazam was consistently the best player on that team, which is crazy.
Well, let's focus in on Sick then, because Balla, that was the name that sprung to your lips as soon as I was talking about core players.
Yeah, I'd probably add Dapper to that list as well. But Sick, my man is the most flexible person in NA, and no matter what role he's playing, he's always providing that amount of firepower at the same time, right? So, like whether he's playing a Sage, whether he's playing, sometimes he played the Breach, but most specifically his Phoenix play on a lot of the different maps that like Haven in a sense, he's the best in that role, hands down. No, like maybe Victor has a shot at that as well. He's unbelievable, and he's always with his team. Like when you think about some of the best like support players, you actually like, even though Sick is like one of those top fraggers and the guy you would never say he's a support player, he oftentimes is doing the same things that a Nitro is able to do, which is getting to the spot that your team needs you to be at the perfect time in the crossfire. So
Yeah.
I think he's for sure a core player of this team,
I mean, he, in a way,
if not the player to watch.
Yeah,
he could be.
He has a crucial role in the team as well, and he's so consistent at it, which is on their attack sides, he is the second man who needs to get the trade off tens, dashing in or trying to make space on Reyna. Sick is the guy who's going to be coming in second, and he has to find the crucial trades, and he does with a lot of consistency. I mean, for me, really, it's like the first half of 2021 so far, Shazam was the best player in NA. Second half of 2021, Sick has been the best player in NA. And those two guys on the same team, it's just outrageous. And I mean, yeah, even as of recent, Sick has jumped back on the Sage a bit, picked right back up where he left off from last year, just being
this
an
game
absolute,
was crazy.
I
He
mean,
dropped like 35 or something, didn't he?
I mean, this was a rough game from Sentinels
He put it on
tactically.
their back.
And he just got them all on his back, little backpack, dragged them all to the finish line. It was really nice.
That's what we're saying.
It was nice of him to carry when he needed to.
But that's what we were saying earlier, right? About the fact that the skill level on this team is so high that even when they can't find the right answer to what their opponent team is doing, they can just brute force it out sometimes. And okay, this is against T1. It's not against the same caliber as the top teams that are going to be heading to Iceland. But I don't think there's any team that you would point at Iceland and you say they have a clear skill advantage over Sentinels. I don't think there's any team that I would be able to point to where I say, oh, Sentinels are out of their depth here. Do you guys disagree? I feel like they're able to hang with everybody.
Yeah, no, I was trying to think of some teams. Like I would have maybe said that about some of the EU teams before, but like I think of Liquid now, and I'm like, okay, yeah, Yampy and Scream, and then it's not that level of depth. I mean, in terms of how many good players there are on the team, how many players are just like star fraggers.
Yeah.
No, I don't see that at all. Actually, I think Sentinels might be one of the deepest individual skill teams that there are.
Yeah, yeah.
Sen, Vikings,
Sure.
and Fnatic.
Maybe. Yeah. Fnatic's got some good skill on it. What I wanted to talk about and touch on a little bit here is two final things. One, though, the TENS situation. But more broadly, leading into that, I want to talk about another thing that I think has really defined Sentinels, which is their struggles. Because there has not been another team that I can think of that has had this many problems or potential problems afflicting them and still been able to overcome them every time. You were talking about First Strike, right? Which was their big tournament loss was to 100 Thieves towards the end of the year, where they got knocked out in the semifinals in a very close game as well against them. And just before that, Shazam's father had passed away. Incredible emotional, like, I don't know, what's even the word? Like burden or turmoil that the guy was going through at that period of time, right before coming into that tournament. And then, of course, I'm sure you're all aware in 2021 as well, with the accusations leveled towards Sinatra too, and they have to make last minute changes and bring in TENS. Then right before this, they had Dapper was tweeting about the fact that he tested positive on a COVID test and then had to take another one and make sure that it was negative afterwards. So they nearly went into this one without their star Sentinel player as well.
Yeah, he had COVID 2 weeks ago, was what he said on Twitter. So,
Right.
like, he actually had it. I don't know whether that was during Challengers Finals. I think the timing actually might line up there, but yeah, and then he tested like everybody. Remember the last episode we were all talking about like, oh, what the hell is going on in Sentinels camp? Like, why are they tweeting all these depressing and foreboding stuff? It was because of that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would say out of any team, this team has had the most random stuff happen to them that
I mean, they've gone through
clearly
everything.
affects.
They've gone
Mhm.
through fucking everything. And it's the kind of stuff where you would give a team a pass to be shit for a while. Like you would at First Strike. You'd be like, yeah, of course, Shazam's not going to turn up at First Strike. He still did, actually. Still performed really well. Of course, they're not going to be very good at Masters 1. They just had to change one of their star players around. No, they actually performed immediately because they're smart enough to be able to integrate a new player into the lineup. Oh, yeah, there's so many very reasonable excuses for why this team would not be able to remain on top, and yet they've been able to time and time again. So the most recent one, though, was the addition of Tens to this roster. Is he still being leased like a fucking car from Cloud9?
Yeah.
He is, isn't he?
He's still a Ford Fiesta. But he...
A Ford Fiesta, that's the car you come up with.
No, he's a Tesla because he looks incredibly impressive. He's really hyped up as well, but the paint's kind of thin. And there's some problems there.
Well, he's filled the role on attack of they need someone who's just going to go in deep and create space. So Sick and Dapper, the guys they can find the trades and sure. They definitely in this previous qualifying stage, they had to iron out the kinks. There was work to be done. They had the honeymoon period where everything just clicked. He just slotted right in. He was fragging well, and they rolled through the first stage. Now the real work had to begin. And the work had to begin with a bit of a meta shift as well. They had to integrate Zoms playing Arten. How was that going to affect the rest of the team? A lot of the fundamentals seemed to be off with Tens in this recent outing, and they improved as the tournament went on. And I think that was probably an inevitability at some point. There's no way that it could just be everything perfectly clicking forever. There has to be real work to be done with the team.
Yeah.
But I think at the moment, it feels like we've arrived at this point where Tens doesn't look like... He's not like the carry star player on this team. Now, he will have maps, granted, where he just dominates the other team. But the most maps of this previous qualifier, he's going to go in deep on the side hits. He's going to try to create space. He definitely needs to be playing Jett or Reyna, is something they've discovered, and he discovered to some extent.
I think he's been trying to work on his raise before Iceland, but who knows whether it's in the right position for him.
But I think what highlights him the most is that he just exists on this team where he's the guy who will just have a round where he just headshots 4 people out of nowhere and just wins them the round outright. Like, they will just be playing a pistol. Okay, everything's fine. All right, they're hitting the site. Let's get ready for the 5-on-5 retake. Okay, Tens just headshot 4 guys with a ghost. I mean, that he will just give them these rounds where he just suddenly wins it for them with unbelievable skill. I think the real question for me heading into this is, what is his level of consistency going to be? And with the hype surrounding him, deservedly so for his individual skill, how does he compare to the best of the other regions? How does he compare to, when they play Fnatic and it's Tens playing Jett and Durka playing Jett? Yeah. Or, if they play Liquid, how does he look against Yampy or Scream? I think that's my big question. What is his skill level compared to the best from other regions?
I also feel like this entire team, I have no worries about them choking on LAN in the slightest because they've been through so much shit themselves. Other than a slight concern about Tens, because that's the
narrative for him for sure.
He's a little bit of an indoor cat, it feels. And if you let him outside of his normal environment, I feel like he struggles a little bit with that. Like, in terms of when the example specifically for Valorant, though, is when he traveled to LA and was talking about, he didn't get sleep and stuff and had to play from a place over in LA. And then, I mean, he just looked really poor in that game. I think they only played one match when he was traveling like that. And of course, those are different circumstances. It's not exactly the same. But I don't know. He strikes me as the kind of person that has things his own way that he likes doing.
The man brought 25 mice to Iceland or something like that. You guys see
Really?
that picture
Did he
of the
really?
bag?
Dude,
There's
he's
like
got a
so
problem.
many mice.
Someone needs to help him. Every time he misses a shot, he changes his sense. He changes his chair
Really?
height. Buys a new desk. Yeah, someone's got to help him.
Okay.
And that's outrageous.
You won't be able to do that online though. It literally
No,
in matches. How many times have you heard like or seen a tweet afterwards? Haha, I changed my DPI like 15 times during that match.
That's
It's like
gotta
the
be-
match
oh,
where he like
he's
top
gotta be-
frags out of the world.
he's
He's
gotta
not
be
trolling in
trolling,
those
right?
situations. No, he's not trolling. He's absolutely not trolling.
Fit all of that in. There must be a little bit of troll. Okay.
He's not taking the. What is? Oh my, I mean,
have you guys seen the pictures of this suitcase like going everywhere? It's just like coming out with like not wrapped up or anything like that. It's so funny.
God, that is
Oh
absolutely
my gosh.
brutal. Okay, so Sentinels, overall chances. I feel like we hit on them a little bit earlier, but I want to start moving on to version 1. So I would be expecting, and I think the North American fans would be expecting, it's a double elimination tournament, so I'm going to say a podium finish where it's like first, second, or third. Are the expectations for Sentinels? Is that reasonable? Are they going to achieve that? What do you think?
I think that that's reasonable. I think that's what their not what their goal should be, but rather I guess my goal for them. The fuck does that mean? But I feel like that's where they should probably end up at the very least. As top 3.
Okay. What do you think, Balla?
Yeah, I think top 2 should be an expectation.
Ooh.
Like that with all the NA, like, oh, NA is so good and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I think that anything other than top 2 would be a failure, and also how good they are at lower brackets.
Sure.
I do genuinely think that they have a chance. I personally say like a smaller chance to actually outright win, compared to maybe some of the other top of the top teams. But yeah, I think that they certainly should be up in that conversation as people who should win Iceland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Solid. Let's take a trip down to version 1 lane, because this is the second team that made it out of North America. And when we even had Vanity on to do a back chat episode, he said there's a tier difference between Sentinels and everyone else in the region right now. So we are going to have very different expectations for version 1. You can tell that just by looking at them as well. You don't necessarily need to hear it from the players themselves. This is a very young team. This team has only existed for something like 4 or 5 months at this point. It's just back to the beginning of 2021. And they haven't existed with this full team either. Now, the other thing to point out straight off the bat that I think is the overarching story for this team heading in, even if you haven't even watched them that much, even if you're unfamiliar with version 1, the headline is they're not using their full roster. They have unfortunately not been able to get Whippy to Iceland because of some kind of visa issue, apparently. And instead, they're going to have to play with Jammies, who is a player from Beast Coast. So already they're at a disadvantage straight away.
Yeah.
So that's going to hinder them quite a lot. How much? Well, let's start from an overarching perspective. What do you think version 1's like feel is coming into Iceland? Even if they were using Whippy, what were your expectations of them?
Well, expectations as to where.
No, just the overarching narrative of them coming in.
I mean, I think the main thing to talk about with them is that they have an excellent read on the meta, and I don't know if that trickles down from just vanity, or if it's the overall feel of the team, how they approach the game, how they try to figure things out in their practice. But they have a good understanding of the game, and in this last qualifier, they had a great understanding of the meta. They were the best team in NA in regards to the Astra and Viper usage, the best 2 agents in the meta right now. And that put them ahead of the pack. And that does inspire confidence in me if they're a team that's able to recognize that and adapt in a short period of time, because it was only 2 weeks before when they had qualified into the final qualifier. Within that period, they made massive shifts in the roles on the team, including adding a new player. And it completely paid off. Nobody really expected. I mean, how could you have expected version 1 to make that run?
Yeah,
it was very unexpected.
Yeah.
Because, as you were saying, they are a new team, and we haven't seen their ability to adapt like they have just by virtue of them not being in the spotlight.
They haven't been around.
So that's very impressive, and that inspires a lot of confidence in me in their read on the game. I think the main thing working against them in this tournament is going to be the firepower compared to some of the other teams. And that's not to say that they're slouches by any means. They do have great players. They do have... That is still funny. They do have some great players. Penny's a great duelist, Zelsis. But I think overall, when you look at the other teams, that is going to be their biggest detriment.
Is what, the firepower?
Yeah, when you compare them to even Sentinels in their own region and so forth.
What's your?
I think the biggest one is the meta masters. Like what I was saying. I think that when you think about all the teams that are at Iceland, this team for sure has the we don't necessarily know to say the best grasp or what, but out of, I think maybe probably them and Liquid, they're the teams that I'm like, holy crap, they've abused the shit out of this meta, no matter what. So yeah, I think they get a buff for that reason, and I think that will be a thing that people are going to start to kind of label them as we head into Iceland. That to me is the biggest narrative. Also, like the remnants of an NA hope in Chaos CC back in Counter-Strike, like with Vanity and the other guys here that are on the team. Like I feel like there's some of that also pride for all the CS players and CS watchers who are coming over to Valorant and going to watch Iceland potentially for their first time as well. Like, yeah, I think that this is a team that they can latch onto for sure.
They're definitely
more so than Sentinels.
They're definitely a dark horse as well. If you enjoy rooting for an underdog, especially one that has been kind of crippled before they're coming in as well, because they're not able to field their full roster, this is definitely a team that you could try and punt for. I want to talk about their. Well, I guess we already discussed their team's overall style. Their map pool, they always ban bind, so I think you know exactly what you're getting when you're going up against version 1 as well. But it's a lot of this kind of stuff. Aggressive Viper Wall usage. Down the middle of Split. They run it on Haven as well, where Whippy was putting his Viper Walls really aggressively into the lobby too. Definitely, there was some serious nerves on display during this game with Cloud9 playing against version 1. This was the game to be able to get in. Yeah. And I think that version 1 really... they're a team that benefits from that, despite the fact that we just watched a clip of Penny dashing into a wall. I think overall, this team was one that really stepped up when the pressure was on. The narrative overall in their game against Cloud9 was that they were the team that was turning up when it got tough, and Cloud9 was crumbling a little bit. So again, this is a good team to have represent you on a big international stage when it comes to the LAN nerves or whatever, because they don't appear to feel it, at least from the small amount that we've seen so far.
And despite watching... Oh, go on, Balla.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
No, because you were going to... Go ahead.
Despite Penny dashing into a wall, he is an outrageously clutch player. This is something I pointed out when we were talking about them before, but his third map stats are just ridiculous. Every third map, he pops off. Every single time. It's pretty ridiculous. And that is one of those things that you can't teach. You can't teach the clutch ability in that way. I'm really high on Penny. I think he's an incredibly talented player. But I think one of the other things, just sort of strategically, that I just love about version 1 though is their approach to defense. And this was even previous to the Viper Astra when they were running more standard kind of pre that meta comps. They always switch up how they approach early round defense. They do something different on sometimes genuinely 12 rounds in a row. They will do something different on their opening every single time to either find a pick, take some different map control in a different area. They change things up constantly, which just adds this extra layer of difficulty for the attackers.
They also have some trap plays that they run too. I remember they run I think it's a Phoenix Rays setup on... Oh, that's so sad. A Phoenix Rays, that's the Astropole though.
Yeah.
They were in a Phoenix Rays setup on Ascent where they like flash and nade to try and catch people in B main and that kind of stuff, where they've got they definitely do have some tactical element to their game that isn't just the scrappy, adaptable nature of North American CS. It is interesting. Who are your players to watch? Penny was one of the names. Oh, sorry. Go on, Balla.
I have like a couple more two
Oh,
more
go,
narratives
go.
here for them, because I think that this is like when we talk about the teams that you can get behind for NA and stuff like
Okay.
that. This team has personality, like more so than probably outside of like maybe Boaster. Like this team
Okay.
has personality. Vanity is, I don't know, man. He has some confidence. He has some. He is just very, very arrogant in a sense. But also they got the cat ears thing going on. Like there's so many different aspects of V1 that I'm just like, yeah, I fucking love this. I
Right.
will. I like when they get up on stage, they do an interview. I'm very excited to see what kind of shenanigans they'll come up with, because it could be really fun.
Yeah, they seem like the unprofessional without being amateurish, right? It's like it's loose, it's fun, they're not taking themselves very seriously, and yet they still have high levels of confidence in themselves. They're not clowns, but they're just chilling out.
Yeah, I mean, there's the banter tweets that the Zelsis tweet to Potter, who will be on the
who is going to be an analyst here as well?
Which is going to be fucking hilarious.
That's good. That's funny.
That's going to be fun. But one like specifically about the game, we talk about scrappiness and whatnot and how they like get into the chaos. But this team is resilient more so than like anybody else. The amount of 3-map series that they go to, the amount of times that they've gone down in a series in the last map, for example, and brought it back. I mean, like even in this game where they qualified for Iceland, it was just like, okay, like is this really gonna happen? And they come out in the second half and like completely dominate. They had that 13-0 comeback in one of the, or 12-0 comeback, I guess you can call it, where they lost 11-1 and then came back 12-0 to win the game in one of the earlier open brackets as well. So resilient is something you should definitely pay attention to. Don't ever count them out, no matter who they're up against, no matter what they're up against score-wise. They will come back and potentially fight for the win.
And also, there's something to be said about just rooting for them, because it sucks if they have to play with a sub.
Definitely.
And you'd want to see them do well. And I mean, extra unfortunate, honestly, because they have a good side of the bracket where they could, honestly, they could do some damage.
Right.
So hopefully, listen, they've shown an ability to play a very competent game despite time working against them. I mean, they had lost player 1, their original 5th, just after qualifying, brought in Whippy, and then took their game to the next level in 2 weeks. So I don't doubt that they could still present a very good showing to everyone, but it's obviously going to be tough. Whippy looked like a crucial new player on their team in regards to what he was doing on Viper specifically. So it's tough, and that's not a good reason to root for him.
Yeah, well, I want to touch on that aspect as well. I spent a lot of yesterday watching Jammy's VODs, because he's not a player that I was that familiar with playing for Beast Coast. And he's also made a recent role swap as well, because he used to play Duelist for them, and now, presumably on this team as well for version 1, he's just going to fill in and play Viper. And there's only one match available of Jammy's playing Viper. So I went and took a look at some of his Duelists just to see his tendencies, and then took a look at him playing Viper as well. He's the kind of player that should never have been on Duelist in the first place, because he's very safe in terms of how he acts in a game. He's not the like overconfident, gonna push everyone and face kind of Duelist player. So I like the swap over to Viper. I feel like he'll be in a better position there. But whereas a lot of the Viper setups that version 1 use are very aggressive. Like we saw the split one. There's also the Haven one that extends all the way into A lobby that Whippy used to do quite a lot. Jammy's very safe. When he's on defense, they're very turtley on the side. Just very basic stuff that a lot of other teams do. But it's not exactly the version 1 twist on it. So I think he's going to have to change up his style as well to be able to fit into this team, because they need a more proactive, aggressive component. You don't have to be always aggressive all the time, but there has to be this layer to your game where you're not just using your utility to turtle on an area. Because what made version 1 excellent in this meta was how much they were denying info deep on the map against their opponents, or creating the threat of pressure that could be really deep in enemy territory. And that was what I think Whippy added phenomenally to the game. Also fragging. Whippy had fantastic fragging. Jammy's is pretty good, but I don't think he's going to add the same level of firepower that Whippy does. So I think that's going to be. I think all of these things are going to be serious challenges for version 1, but that's to be expected when you get a sub. And especially you're subbing for a guy that was part of your explosive improvement. Because pre-Whippy, version 1 weren't a team that was going to get to Iceland. So, yeah, I think this team's got a lot of challenges ahead of them for integration.
I think Jammies is like, I know Jammies a little bit more because he did come from Fortnite. He was one of the guys who was just like a consistent, like crazy god aimer. So I think some of those worries might be a little bit unfounded, although obviously, you know, you put a piece into a team and it's just like completely different. But I don't expect, you know, him not to be confident enough to go for the aggressive play. I think honestly, Vanity in his ear is going to be enabling him to do things that he probably hasn't been able to show in Valorant up to this date. So I'm pretty excited about Jammies. Though I do have to wonder, like, dude, how weird is it? Like, he's just like, okay, I'm going to Iceland, I guess, with you guys. It's like the first time you meet, it's like possibly on the plane, possibly when you land there at the hotel. It's like, hey guys, I'm your 5th. Woo!
And he knows that he's not playing for his spot because they've already confirmed they're keeping Whippy in the future. So, you know, he's just there to try and be as good as he can during Iceland. All right. Who are the other players to watch? Talked about Penny. Talked about Jammies because he's like the focus of this narrative of the replacement. Who is there one other big player that defines version 1?
I don't know if there's another player that defines them, but
no, Vanity, of course, like Vanity, 100%.
You think as an individual, like as a player? I mean, he defines them as a leader, like as what he brings.
I'd say as both, right? I'd say he's what the best Astra that we've seen so far, right? Like, and that's going to be a major part of Iceland. So,
yeah, I think he's definitely been the best Astra. Well, I mean, Zoms has been pretty decent at it too, but Vanity was very good on the fly and had a lot of setups for how to get good value out of it too. So I don't think it's unreasonable to say that Vanity could be the best in NA.
That is pretty true actually. I think that is pretty fair. I mean, Zelsis is just a strong firepower duelist. Plays a lot of Rays from them at the moment, playing some Reyna. I think Effie's is an interesting player. He has some pretty great utility usage, actually. On Sova, he has a lot of unique arrows, things that he seemed to have come up with on his own. Been proving himself post being kicked from Gen.G, now bouncing back on version 1.
The redemption arc.
Yeah.
Former player turned back into a coach as well. Sorry. So
he went
former coach turned back into
he was a player who became a coach in CS, then became a player, got kicked, and now is on a team finding more success.
Right. That's a cool
He's looked like a solid, he's just a solid support player.
Yeah.
With good utility. So
what are their serious chances? Version 1, are we able to pull up the bracket actually, Kurt, as well? Because I think that's going to influence some of our discussion here. Whereas with Sentinels, it's like, okay, whatever their path is, if they have to make a lower bracket run, we can be fairly confident that they're still going to make it deep. With version 1, it's less about that, right? It's more about how far can they actually make it? How long can they dodge the elite opponents? Because they are probably a tier below what's going on there. What are your expectations of version 1? Remember that they have this sub that they're playing with as well. How do you think? How realistic are their chances at Iceland?
Well, they
unrealistic.
They honestly, I think if they can make it into the top 5, I feel like that's respectable for them, given circumstance and everything. Had they not had to bring in a sub, actually, maybe still same. I think it's just going to be hard for them to crack top 4. But if they somehow crack top 4, I think that would be an excellent finish for them.
I mean, that's unbelievable finish for them, I think. Because then at that point, you're finishing ahead of, I mean, Liquid, Fnatic, Sentinels, Vikings. You're knocking one of those out of the top 4.
Yeah.
That's really big for version 1. Even if they didn't have a sub, that would still be overperforming expectations, I think.
I think if they can finish in 5th place, if they can beat like New Turn, Sharks, those teams, and finish in 5th, and even show some just show some good gameplay, some good ideas, and have respectable games against some of the top teams in the lower bracket, I think that is a nice finish for them.
Right.
I think beating one or two of the other, like beating one of the EU teams or beating one of the Brazilian teams, I think would be a success for them. I don't really care where they place. Just as long as they do that, I'd be really, really happy.
Right. I have far weaker expectations.
Really?
Than you. Yeah. I mean, if you pull up the bracket again, Kurt, sorry, I just want to explain how fucked these kind of brackets are because there's 10 teams. If version 1 beats Crazy Raccoon,
right,
and then loses to Team Liquid, they're still in lower bracket round 1. So same position that Crazy Raccoon would be. At least that's the way that it worked when they ran a 10-team bracket like this in SEA. So if version 1 beat Crazy Raccoon and then lose to Liquid, which I think is almost guaranteed, they would probably be facing Crew in the first round. And, even then, I think things will start to get sticky for a version 1 team that is playing with a substitute. And especially a sub that was so important to their success, I think. I think this team has really kind of been hit with a heavy blow coming into Iceland. And I don't want to overpump people's expectations, or even the other part as well to this is, if version 1 end up bombing out, people are going to use it as ammunition to say, oh, NA is just shit. And I don't want that to even be acceptable as an argument in any sense, because this isn't real version 1. This is them playing last minute with a substitute that they weren't intending to, and this wasn't the roster that actually qualified for Iceland. So I don't think that it's reasonable to set the same weighty expectations upon their shoulders that they should be carrying the burden of the entire region's fan hopes. This is just a dark horse that you could take a punt on. Don't expect it to go far. It's only got 3 legs. Just give it a push out the gate and see where it goes. That's my feel on version 1 right now. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful to the team. I mean that to try and set reasonable expectations so people don't shit on them if they fail. Right? That's actually the goal there.
I think that's very fair. Honestly, even if they make it through the lower bracket and they beat Crew and then they play a top team again, if they can get a win or 2 on the board.
Yeah, I mean, if they beat Crazy Raccoons and then Crew, I think that's actually a pretty good result for them, even if they end up going out.
Oh, that'd be so disappointing.
But, I mean, who would the next team be that they face? It'd probably be like Fnatic or Sentinels, wouldn't it? After they get thrown down to that side.
I believe so.
Or it'd be like, maybe they would face like Sharks Newton. This bracket's a mess.
Unless,
I don't know.
Wait, would they play? Maybe they get X10, and then they can.
maybe. Yeah.
I have no idea how this. How the fuck does this thing work, man?
But anyway,
what is going on?
If you're interested in a real dark horse, I think version 1 is your team. They're gonna be fun anyway. I think they've brought a large content team actually to Iceland. So they're probably going to be making some fun stuff there, and they have the personalities to be able to make it work too. So yeah, very good. Overall, how are you feeling about North America?
It should be good.
Nervous, man. I want to do so well, but I'm just like, I've always had for so long in Valorant. I've been like, NAs, they got nothing. They got nothing. I want it to be there because it's my people, but
okay.
I'm hoping for both.
Okay.
Like before version 1 lost Whippy, I was actually like, I probably would have put them maybe closer to where I would be putting Sentinels right now, because I did think that Sentinels felt kind of weak going into this, right? Felt kind of weak at Challengers Finals, even though they were able to beat it or to win it. So I'm nervous. I have I think that they're going to do well. Not necessarily like, over the moon well, but I think that they're going to do well enough to be like, yeah, we're serious contenders on a global stage. And that's what I'm hoping that they can do.
Okay. Huff that North American hopium. Huff it real hard, fans at home. and get ready for the European episode, because that one will be out tomorrow. We'll catch you then.